I'm Phil Kerner, the Tool and Die Guy, and because I suspect this next recording might be shared a few times, if you don't know who I am, just please visit thetoolanddieguy.com. That's where I share my history of manufacturing and my family's history of manufacturing. A few days ago, I posted a very simple picture on Instagram, which immediately gets shared to Facebook because Facebook owns Instagram, and a lot of comments. It was just an ancient set of easy outs of all things. But I got the following comment from a guy named Tony. Hey Phil, Earnhardt Tool and Machine in St. Louis has been in business for over 83 years. Dunes Point Capital is the owner. Well, I can address that in just a second. Last Thursday they announced they are no longer going to do the tool and die business. They said the department wasn't making money. Phasing out the tool room. They let about a dozen people go, including the design room, and the rest of the tool room will be terminated June 30th. It's a sad time. I was there 27 and a half years. I've been in the trade for 40 years. Tool and die is dying in America. I hope this COVID-19 pandemic opens up people's eyes. China has us over a barrel. I'm sorry to dump my feelings on your post. I'm interested in what you have to say about mold making and the tool and die future here in America. Well, I've been waiting all my life for someone to ask me for my opinion of this whole mess. My family was treated very well in the tool and die industry for, like I said, since 1920. My grandfather was listed on the 1920 census as a tool maker, and it's been passed down through the generations, but none of my sons will be in the trade. Machining is one thing, but tool and die making is another. Tool and die making has always been very labor intense, and as the CNC machinery came along, things got a little crazy back in the mid to late 90s when we were switching from duplicating models to make 3D products to CNC machining to make the same product, right? So a lot of people like to whine about NAFTA. It wasn't NAFTA. It was the World Trade Organization. When they let China in, and this is not an anti-Chinese rant, but what really ended up happening there, because at that time, the tool and die making industry and the mold making industry was so labor intense, you could get the tools built for about 10 cents on the dollar. And I know that. Back in those days, I had my own shop. Now, I was in the toy business, and the toy business was a lot of fun because it was all fit and function. As long as that toy car, whatever toy boat, looked good, didn't have sharp edges and everything fit, nobody's going to measure that toy boat and say you were 3 thousandths too long or too short. It didn't matter. So we whipped that stuff out. So it was a really fun industry to be in. I would tell you this, it was lucrative, but it's different. When you're holding millions, that's a different business. When you're holding plus or minus 5, it's a different business. But don't be the guy that holds millions and try to build a toy mold. You'll die. So what somebody else might charge $75,000 for, I have a bill for $35,000. Well, once China was let in, and I was kind of following this, and I could see what was going on 20 years ago almost now. People started losing their businesses, right? Their customers were going to China, and I saw it firsthand. I had a really nice business going, building tools for the Little Tykes Toys Company, and one day I got to put up for an auction for molds, and they had a new purchasing department, okay? And what ended up happening with that was they put their molds up for bid, and what I would be dirt cheap, but I normally build for 30. I'd say let's go 14.9, and China would be $4,200. My steel was $3,000. Okay, so that was the beginning and the end. I made it about another year and a half, and I closed the doors. I didn't lose my business. I closed my business. There's a big difference. The bank didn't have to foreclose on me, but I saw the writing on the wall. Now, let's go back in history if you want to know a little bit about the tool making industry. Back in the days of even my uncle's company, Kerner Tool and Die, back in the 50s and 60s, not one kid that was an apprentice or a toolmaker at Kerner Tool and Die went to Vietnam. And you may or may not like that, but the reason they didn't go there was the tool and die industry was so important that it was for the trade and the war effort that they wouldn't risk it to lose those guys. That's how important it was. So the biggest problem the tool and die industry and the mold making industry ever had is nobody knows what we do. Nobody knows what we do except for us. And I would always say, and I still believe, the tool and die industry and the mold making industry, the die making industry, those are all the backbone of America. We build the fixtures and the dies and the molds that produce the parts we need to function. Well, when that all left, and a lot of it did, I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania, the jewel of the Rust Belt. You can say there's still some tool shops here, but they're a shadow of what they used to be. Just a shadow. So we gave away our manufacturing backbone, tool and die making. Anybody can make parts. Anybody with a Bridgeport or a lathe in their garage can make parts. But to build a 3D mold takes some money and some engineering and some investment. And that's what separates the men from the boys. I've always been very, if you've never watched any of my videos, I'm very vocal about my bias for the tool and die making and mold making industries. And that's because the stuff we build is so important to the consumer in America. Nobody knows what we do. Your Bic razor blade, those are $100,000 molds. You'd be shocked what goes into just building a mold for a razor blade mold, a disposable razor. Your iPhone, everything you touch is built by tool makers, but now in China. So my biggest issue was, back to the future of tool and die making, why would we ever partner with a communist country? I don't believe in World War II anybody ever said, you know, Hitler's a really bad guy, but boy, his prices are so good. But we let American manufacturing flock to China. And I'm not against the Chinese people, but it's a communist regime that we, as he said, has us over a barrel, you bet. And now, once our medications are affected, everybody's like, this is really bad. Everything's affected. You don't even know. Again, people don't know what tool makers do. So, the future. Well, I don't know. I appreciate the president, and this isn't a political rant, but at least this president mentions manufacturing. He likes to go to manufacturing plants. He gets it. I don't know how much he can change. He's fighting with China. Everybody said we're going to go bankrupt. We didn't. China needs to be eliminated as a supplier, but we just can't seem to do it. It's going to take congressional oversight to bring the companies back, and I don't know if there'll be enough tool makers like me to build the tools anymore. The average age in a mold shop is me. Not good. And why would a kid get into this trade when it's crazy and people that have been in business for 83 years are closing down their tool shops, okay? So I'm sorry for the long explanation here, but I do have a solution, and I would like to call it the country of origin label. So I went to Walmart and looked around, and you know, you go through these boxes of toys. I gravitate towards the toys because that was my industry. A very funny story about the toys is that once I closed my shop and everything, I'd see the molds I used to build and everything, and then they get them rebuilt in China. You know, what I used to build for 20 or 30 grand, they get built for $3, but guess what? The toy is still $19.95. The American consumer didn't gain anything by this. Your 401k did well because those companies are public and they got their tooling costs down, but you lost your job. Where'd your 401k plan go? Again, mold making, tool making is the backbone of this country, but nobody knows what we do. So I try to do that on my own, the best I can as a tool and die guy, to talk about tool making. This is the most personal I've ever got about it. But again, back to the country of origin order or law, I think every package in the store should have a flag that represents about 10% of the box, with American flag, a Mexican flag, a French flag, a Canadian flag, an American flag. Where did it come from? Instead of having to flip the box around and find this tiny little print that says made in China, imagine going into Walmart and seeing all those American flags, which you won't. But imagine going into Walmart and seeing all those Chinese flags. Be a real eye-opener for the American consumer, like, I had no idea. Because they don't. You just want a toy for your kid, Fisher-Price, and I'm sorry I'm picking on them, they were real jerks back in the 90s. They made it very clear to me that every engineer at Fisher-Price had to go to China for 6 months and learn Mandarin, because that was where the future is. And I used to say, even back in the 90s, every Fisher-Price toy, if it has a picture of a kid on it, should be a Chinese kid, because that's where they figured this out 20 years ago, okay? So your American-made companies, your American toy companies, they get everything built over there, and it's all junk, and godly knows what diseases are stuck to them now by slave labor. So you asked for my 2 cents. Let's look at this, the country of origin order. I might do some more research on that, but imagine going into a store and seeing all those USA flags, all those Chinese flags. It makes it very clear to anybody, oh, I have a choice. There's an American product, it's $1 more, or I can buy the Chinese product. And you might say, well, that's not fair. It totally is. Most people want American products, even in China. This would be so big for America, and American manufacturing would be amazing. So I'm Phil Kerner, the Tool and Die Guy. My 2 cents on a Friday night. Maybe I'll do some more this weekend. If I don't, have a great Memorial Day weekend. I'll be personally putting a flag on my dad's grave. He served in World War II. I don't think they're allowed to do it this week because of the COVID-19 pandemic. They're not going to put the flags on the graves at Memorial Day. There will be one on Fritz Kerner's gravesite. And that's the way it should be. Again, I'm Phil Kerner, the Tool and Die Guy, and we will see you on the next video. Please be kind with your comments. Show me that you belong in this trade and be the person that your dog thinks you are.